Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be tackling Egypt's economic file. Now, Egypt has suffered through sharp recessions economically for the past 5 years due to a lot of political turmoils. But there is some sort of an atmosphere of optimism after the IMF has actually agreed the loan worth $12 billion to Egypt, and we are receiving a first tranche and hopefully receiving a second tranche soon enough. Now, the Prime Minister also said that at the economic conference this week, Egypt expects an improvement in its credit rating. We also understand that Standard & Poor's has revised its sovereign credit outlook for Egypt from negative to stable. We're going to be tackling all of these issues and talking about Egypt's economic file in this episode of the Daily Debate. But before we start our show, let me welcome our very distinguished guest, Engineer Samir Riad, member of the Egyptian Industries Federation. Engineer Riad, thank you very much for joining us. And before we start our discussion, ladies and gentlemen, let's check out this report regarding Egypt to receive the second IMF loans tranche in the spring, and we'll be right back.
Egypt is expected to receive the second tranche of the International Monetary Fund's $12 billion loan in the spring, according to IMF Mission Chief in Egypt, Chris Jarvis, who also said the loan would be divided into 6 tranches, 2 disbursements each year over the period of 3 years. He said most of the payments are worth $2 billion, except the first one, which is for a bit more, and the second is for a bit less, because the IMF wanted to give Egypt a bit more support at this point in the process. Jarvis said there are no further actions required from Egypt, confirming that all the big actions had been already taken at the beginning. He said that the IMF vision is in line with the government's plan to eliminate electricity subsidies over 5 years and most fuel subsidies over 3 years. According to him, what remains is a question of keeping up with the efforts already taken in order to bring down the budget deficit and decrease inflation. He revealed that 5 revisions are set to take place by the IMF throughout the 3 years to ensure that the whole policy package is leading towards the right kind of outcome. Jarvis added the IMF would help guide the government and the central bank on that process. He noted that if things continue to be on track, they would continue to make the disbursement into the program. He also praised the social protection measures taken by the government, saying they will help reduce some of the difficulties of the adjustment process. The IMF chief praised Egypt's government's recent measures of liberalizing the exchange rate for the pound against foreign currencies, enacting the VAT and reforming subsidy programs as what Egypt needs to get foreign exchange flowing into the country again and reduce its budget deficit. The IMF Executive Board approved a 3-year, $12 billion loan to Egypt to support its economic reform program, with Egypt's central bank confirming late in the day that receipt of an initial batch of $2.75 billion. According to Jarvis, the IMF loan is expected to help Egypt achieve levels of growth between 5 and 6% in the years ahead, which is higher than Egypt's economic growth rate in the fiscal year 2015-16 that registered 4.3% of GDP.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and starting off our discussion, Engineer Riad, now, International Monetary Fund has approved its $12 billion loan to Egypt. Egypt is expected to receive the second tranche of this loan in the spring. How far do you think this loan will be helpful to revive Egypt's ailing economy? Because a lot of people are saying, well, it is a good step, however, Egypt needs a whole lot more than $12 billion to actually help revive the economy. So how really is this helpful? Why are people being optimistic for receiving this loan? Should they be optimistic? Are we too optimistic for our own good?
I believe, this is a good sign, of course, that somebody trusts our economy to give us this loan. You are borrowing money. And borrowing money is not a great thing. But, that means that we have to depend on ourselves. If the loan is not enough, let us do it, ourselves as well and complete what we need, We cannot borrow all the time. We have to depend on ourselves. We have to organize ourselves. We have to think about the future. We have to think that how to raise our standard of living. This is a sort of a bell which is it has to be given to everybody to tell him that we have to do much better than what we are doing. Let us earn our own money to enable us to do a better, to have a better economy. No doubt that the trust of Egyptian economy is a good thing. But on the other hand, we have to think about ourselves. Nobody will help us more than ourselves.
Yes. Engineer Riad, this is supposedly the biggest ever Middle East loan given by the IMF, and it was given to Egypt, which is an encouraging sign, as you've mentioned, showing how much they trust the process, the economic reform program and the process that Egypt is undertaking. But do you feel that Egypt is really being the biggest, and seeing that this is a lot of confidence from the IMF, but is this also a sign of how bad the economic situation is in Egypt?
Well, it is bad, but not, there is a lot of countries which has been passing through worse cases like us, but they survived, and let us survive. Let us, our aim to put it in front of us, how to survive, this loan will help us, how this loan will give it back in a proper way. We don't want to pay interest on top of that. I believe, in ourselves. Hopefully, only 5 years ago, we had a hell of a lot of, money, in hard currencies. We have got, we were in a much better situation. But, of course, everybody knows what Egypt passed through. And definitely that is not an excuse only, but it is a sign that we passed through a difficult time, and it is beyond our capabilities not to recover without help. And that if they give us a help, they know exactly that we will pay back and we will recover. And that is a good sign which we have to be optimistic about it.
Yes. Well, do you expect that this loan would actually help the foreign currency inflow problem that Egypt has been suffering since actually 2011?
It depends on our behavior. It depends on how we are going to import and what is our export. How can we generate hard currency and how to minimize our importation. And everybody has to think about it, to live in such a way that that he is in Egypt and he has to live the Egyptian case.
Yes.
And let us have the Egyptian case in front of us. And we behave, rich or poor, in such manner to enable us to recover.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, still we have a lot to talk about regarding the IMF loan coming to Egypt, but let's go out for a short break and we'll be right back.
Be the first to know. The news live at the site of the event. Information on events as they are happening. If it's breaking news, it's Nile TV. For ads on Nile TV, Egyptian Radio and Television Union, the economic sector, info@nileinternational.com. egyptianradio.net or call us on the following numbers.
دي كل واحد يشتغل بضمير.
كلنا نشتغل، احنا نغير نفسنا بس.
الناس تعامل ضميرها وتعامل مرضي الله.
الناس تبقى كويسه مع بعضيها.
هيبقوا كويسين.
كلنا خير ومصر كلها خير.
هي ام الدنيا. الشعب المصري ده طيب.
لو كل واحد ابتدى بس بنفسه بلد هتتصلح.
كل واحد يعمل ربنا وضميره. الناس تبقى حلوه كده مع الناس.
لازم اخلاق الناس تبقى كويسه.
نحب بعض.
الاحترام.
ضماير الناس.
الاخلاق بس.
ان شاء الله ينصلح حالنا بقى.
نتقبل اراء بعض. هي الديمقراطيه. هي الديمقراطيه.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and now we're also joined by Professor Dr. Gamal Qaliouby, the Petroleum and Energy Specialist. Dr. Qaliouby, thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Qaliouby, now first of all, talking about the getting the IMF, the second tranche of the IMF loan, that is a total of $12 billion. Do you feel that one of the reasons for the IMF to actually trust Egypt with this loan, the biggest for the Middle East by the IMF, was through all the austerity measures, if we may call them, that Egypt has undertaken, the rise in prices, the lifting of some of the subsidies for petroleum, the value-added taxes. Do you feel that these are some of the measures that encouraged the IMF to give the loan to Egypt, maybe even some they were considered conditions?
I consider that's a very tough exam. If you like it in a different expression, I would say that it's a different exam. It was tough exam, was not in reality, because in the main portion was not the most interesting for our Egyptian the party is the loan itself. But we just gained the interesting and also the attraction of the whole way forward related to the international institutes' finances. And you know what, that's when sometime from different countries in the countries, the monetary is banking, one of the aid and also the calibration tools allow to get some trusting and way forward for many classifications. Talk about businessmen, we talk about the mega country, they have a projects or some investment we're looking for. Also, we think about how to just orient the batches of our countries if they have oriented business in such area like Egypt. Egypt, in terms of a green area for attraction investments, we just come up to rank number 5, because you know we have slated that 6 very repetitionally and has also passed all skills related to the attraction country in terms of secure investments. Egypt are part of that one. In the past, in the last 2 years, was considered that Angola was the first one in Africa, and the second one was Egypt. Now it's coming in the opposites, and Egypt now leading the first attractive and willing country dealing with the investments in Africa, and number 5 ranking in all over the worldwide activities in terms of evaluations. A portion of that's the monetary banking is, and you know that well, that there is a terms and the conditions. These terms and the condition first is a portion of the tough exam for some advices had been delivered, which is supposed to be delivered in advance for a negotiation team between the country looking for a loan and also the leading of the groups inside the monetary bank, which has contributed over 24 of governors, representative of a gross share portion of the total assets in the bank itself. This contributed portion had been collected a lot of reporting related to the status of economies inside that Egypt and how the feedback related to the citizens in the streets and how the way forward in terms of the diplomatics orientation to the country, the force that Egypt has a different philosophy in terms of mega projects. Fifth, that's willing that the politics leading now completely had been tested, that's had a huge trusting to the base of 70% of a population dealing with the normal basis of living, not in a different acknowledgement, peoples or scientific. In some time, the scientific or politics or in some liberalian mind, they have a different story, different opinion, different negotiation, different even obstacles related to the way forward. But we talk about a major contribution of 70%. They trusted, and I think, well, me and you and all of the peoples had been already showed well whenever we started to deal with the free floats and also related to raise the subsidiaries across or about the fuel. I think this was not so easy to dealing with that one. And I think one of the encouraged and gave no doubts to the Montreal staff team evaluation that Egypt now, in compared to the previous governments, is part the exam in a trusting to the population, not a way that they are maintained or mandatory to pass through.
Yes. Well, Dr. Qaliouby, you're saying that Egypt is now becoming probably the #1 ranked attractive destination for investment in Africa. However, we still suffer of a lack of foreign investors coming to Egypt, and a lot of still point to the investment law as a cause, the bureaucratic problems. So how is that possible if we are the #1 attractive destination for foreign investment, yet still foreign investors are quite hesitant to come and invest in Egypt?
Thanks, a really smart question for that part. But you know, in some time, if in some mentalities of Egyptian would like to just deliver a message in front of the screen, sometime they are defensive about his country without some basis. I think your question would like to say what kind of basis which had been evaluated a country like Egypt to be on that staff rank, and I can just convince that all be okay. That's a good question related to that. First of the Africa, you know what, that's over 26 countries in Africa, they are suffering that their boundaries was not secure. That is very important. Second, that the security as a civilization securities inside the streets was not okay in compared to what we have in Egypt versus what you have in 26 countries of Africa. I think that's clear vision results. It can be followed. The third one, that's the mega projects. Is not a routine incomes had been in compared to the previous Egypt. Egypt in the past was very limited sources, and that sources is related to our people abroad transactions, also some of tourism, something like related to the petroleum investment also, and the fees of the Suez Canal. I think this is, it's called a routine resources in Egypt, was not in a proper attraction or some way forward that I trusted for any international banking or any finance institute that you can deal for more further with this country. And moreover, that countries had a lot of crises, like a shortage in electricity, like a shortage in also a reserve of petroleum and gases. I think this is a lot of complexities and obstacles not allowed to encourage. If you go for the calibration, what I said in the tool, to put the rank of Egypt, okay, think about now Egypt, they already proceed with 5 things with out of the boxes. First, that you have a mega projects. We will talk about 8 mega projects. Second, you already improve the investment in energy, and you try to switch to a different, more complex equation, too easy with alternative ways of energy basket. So the energy basket now was not restricted in the past for oil and gas. Now you have varieties. You have renewable energy, you have nuclears, you have coal power station or power plants. Also, you have a new exploration for a very strong discoveries in the Mediterranean Sea. Also in Delta, like what you have in Norris and Zohr. And the prospection to Egypt within a few years will be efficient to sustain all the needs internally and ready to even exporting the gas and also exporting one of advanced value added to the petrochemistry is a lot. The force, that's also the role, politics role of Egypt now is completely different. We are a member in Security Council, we are a member in Human Rights Council, we are now leading the COMESA, SADC, and also South Africa. We are dealing with a very proper, kindly neighbors way forward. I think that's the contribution. And the last one, which is very important, we are a very open politics country with 360 degree. We are not oriented anymore to a certain politics country or a certain way forward. We are dealing now with 360, which is a called open, secure economies.
Yes, definitely. Well, Engineer Riad, talking about the basis of evaluation, now, other than the fact that Egypt is becoming one of the, probably the #1 attractive destination for foreign investment in Africa, also the Standard & Poor's actually revised its sovereign credit outlook for Egypt from negative to stable, even though that as a result of the past 5 years of political turmoil, the budget deficit reached over $21.3 billion, which constitutes about 12.2% of the GDP, almost equal, a gross debt almost equal to the GDP of the country. How is that possible that we've reached this from negative to stable in sovereign credit outlook, and how is that possible with all the economic difficulties, the lack of availability for foreign currencies, still a lot of potential projects with foreign countries and foreign investors still didn't really fulfill their potential? How is that even possible?
Well, you know, we have to not to ignore the capabilities of the local industries, local economy, and definitely it has been handled, the whole matter in the last few years, quite well. All of this is contributing to the fact that, you know, we are sustaining this pressure and so on. And I believe always that we have to depend as well on our investors here inside the countries. We have not to let factories close down. We have to, our agriculture has to be seen about it that we can generate as well the hard currency. There is a lot of things can be done. Always we talk about foreign investment. What about the local investment? Let us look at it. Let us see that they can generate and they can close the deficit and they can help our economy to survive and to revive the whole thing. All of this, there is a potential in Egypt. Let us not ignore it yet. Always we are looking for foreign investment, and this, of course, I'm not ignoring this. This is it can help very much and so on. But let us look at the local ones as well. This is, in my view, is very important.
Well, do you feel that getting this loan from the IMF and other loans from other European or Arab countries, do you feel that it will mainly be invested in the infrastructure projects in Egypt and the mega projects as well, as opposed to investing a little bit more in the local businesses and industries?
There is definitely short-term, you know, necessities for things, and there is a long-term, and definitely both of them are important, you know. But now this has to be weighing it. There has to be seen about it. What is, you know, what is next? What is more important? Definitely both of them is very, very good. We want to invest as well for our children, but we want as well to live. We want as well to have a better standard of living. We have to, you know, there is a lot of negative things. We have to get rid of it. And definitely we don't like to borrow money. But if we are forced to, let us have it as a help to, you know, on a short term, you know, to help us to go forward.
Yes, definitely. Well, Dr. Qaliouby, being an energy and petroleum specialist, now everyone knows, and you've pointed out, that the direction that the government is actually taking care and really paying attention to the energy sector. I mean, we're talking about the expansion of electricity plants, talking about the nuclear Daba plant, talking about the exploration of natural gas in the Mediterranean. A lot of projects related to energy. And earlier today, even President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy and Petroleum, talked about how the petroleum and the energy will be allocated a lot to a lot of the industries and the factories here in Egypt. Now, it seems, as you've mentioned, that there is a whole lot of potential in this sector. Do you feel that it is safer to actually cut deals, government-to-government agreements and memorandums of understandings would be much more practical to maximize the profit and potential out of this sector? Or do you feel that still foreign investors and the private sector as well could really play a big role in really fulfilling the potential of this sector?
I think I just display back for you how the oil business contributed in the wallet. Unfortunately, it was not so easy for any country to go and try to invest individually, unless this country has the more powers and the flexibility of diplomatics way that you can deal with that and open a countries to deal and proceed with agreement. The situation in Egypt was very complicated in early of 2012. And I think me and you and all the peoples had been suffering a lot that the electricity had been cut without no reasons. And I think that's the main concern for the peoples when they said something like that. The electricity was not cut in 2010 and was coming to 2012 and start to be cut. Unfortunately, I tell you, there is a lot of politics even for the oil section. You know, the contribution of the total international investment companies in the world, they are contributed of 27 companies. These 27 companies is dealing with politics because it belongs to another countries. So if you talk about England, for example, they have two of big companies, British Gas and British Petroleum. If you go to Holland, you will find Shell. You will find Total, France. You will find Eni, Italian. You will find also Phillips, Conoco, Texas Oil, Texas Mobil, Esso, USA. You will find Aramco, Saudi Arabia. I mean, the contribution of these people already spread it, the batch of the map across the world, and they have spread it, each own their business accordingly. So as a portion of, as the Egyptian, we already built our vision since 1957, first agreement under the law of 66 for 1953. It's considered that the ultimate portion of the investment related to oil section Egypt is from foreigners, 95 up to 97%, and a very narrow channel. You give it to the individual local business, which maybe, in my opinion, was very correctively and succeed for certain period. But after the politics put the fingers inside this big politics of these big companies, now the story will be completely different. And this is why I'm said to that one. Many reasons had been lead that have a shortage in electricity in 2012, leading to 2013. We have many problems.
Yes. Well, Dr. Qaliouby, do you think that, talking about the role of politics really playing in this sector, do you feel that strengthening the relationship with Russia, being a big petroleum and oil player, do you think that changes the dynamics for this sector for Egypt as well?
Honestly speaking, it's not a matter of that I have a good... I said again to you that we have an open relation with all countries with respectation for whatever country would like to invest in Egypt. We are more very helpful for that one. But we talk about the benefit now for Egypt as an area. The benefits for you here in the Mediterranean Sea, we are the second prospection in the world. So that's first, which is more attractive for you. Second, it's easy for you because the area of the Mediterranean Sea is across 23 countries in the remote area of 46,000 kilometers. It's a remote closed area. Third, that you have a potential infrastructure in Egypt allowed to, whatever is coming for you, easy to transport or easy to liquefy the gas and just to go for a transportation due to the factories you have, due to also the third add value for the petrochemistry industry, which you already improved in Egypt.
Yes.
So, I mean, the combination and the condition allow that you already representative, an attractive deal for any of these international companies would like to come and more than welcome. The point is that the leading and the decision making was in the past delayed, that you oriented the country to be with many mitigations plan. And this was not in the energy section in the past.
Yes.
And we have suffered from electricity shortage and also shortage in the fuel since 2006. Whatever Egypt go forward, they will go more complicated up to that you have a different theory and different vision like what we have.
Yes.
We start this section and we try to put three main things. The first, that Egypt in a very short time shall be ready to supply and support any such industry or factories or investment or any of foreigners would like to invest in Egypt. We are going to support to him by energy, I mean gas and electricity.
Self-sufficient.
And this is very, very important because this is one of the most important, attractive deal that bring the investor to Egypt without no problem. The second, you try to deal with the new investment law, which is clear for you that under the 17 rules had been published under the umbrella of the high authority investment last 3 weeks, had been now clarified that the one window will be clarified for any different investment. The third thing, which is also very confident to me that it may add a positively that we are going to convert Egypt in 2020 to be a country dealing with petrochemistry, which it's a very huge market, which create a different philosophy for your manufacturing at value, which allow to enter a big, huge market like a petrochemistry is over $1,300 billion. With dedicated for 7 countries. I think now the story is to try to attract mega project in different philosophy, in different technology of manufacturing, add a value to the oil and energy section in Egypt.
Yes. Well, Engineer Riad, going back to the IMF, there's a lot of talk that has been going around since the Chinese yuan has been added to the basket of currencies being internationally dealt with. Now, do you agree with the talk about receiving a respectable amount of this IMF loan in the Chinese yuan instead of the dollar? Do you think that that would be beneficial for Egypt? It would be maybe a lot more accessible, especially that Egypt and China now have a lot of agreements and economic projects in line, or do you think that it's not really going to make any difference? Still, the scarcity of the foreign currency, whether if it is the dollar or the yuan, will still be there?
I believe that any currency which is, which has got a relationship with the other currency, it means today the Chinese currency, it is already in the market. It is well, recognized. And I don't think that it's got a huge effect on that. I'm not, because there is a relationship between, all these major currencies and our Egyptian currency. The main thing is, advantages could be advantage through barter deals between China and Egypt. But, if the currency is involved, I don't think so.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's not just the IMF loan coming to Egypt. Egypt is actually nearing a deal worth $800 million as a European aid to expand the social safety net. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back to discuss it.
Egypt is in advanced talks with European countries to secure bilateral loans worth $800 million as it expands efforts to alleviate poverty and ease pressure from economic reforms. Minister of International Cooperation Sahar Nasr said the World Bank had agreed to new financing of $400 million, which will go towards a public works program focused on job creation and a microfinance initiative. Both are scheduled to be launched in early 2017. Minister Nasr also a second $1 billion tranche from a $3 billion three-year loan for budget support from the World Bank was due before year-end, the first having been disbursed earlier this year. She noted that a second $500 million tranche of a similar $1.5 billion loan from the African Development Bank was also expected before the end of the year. The minister said that both loans would go towards social development programs, including in health, education, access to water, and supporting small and medium-sized enterprises. She noted that Cairo is seeking to mitigate the impact of current economic reforms on the poorest people. The minister said the government aims for economic growth that will create quality jobs that are inclusive, so segments are not left behind and governorates are not lacking. She also added Egypt is seeking new financing to expand projects aimed at creating jobs to ensure nobody was disadvantaged. Egypt recently more than doubled the number of families eligible for conditional welfare payments from 700,000 to 1.5 million and rolled out a new housing subsidy for Egypt's poorest.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Dr. Qaliouby, trying to secure $800 million of European aid for the social safety net, trying to help recreate job opportunities and really working on the microeconomic potential for Egypt. Are we happy with that? Are we mainly, yes, it is good to have a lot of money, but it's still borrowing money, and it's still, we're going to have to pay this money with its interest, these debts, later on. Is this something that is a short-term sort of way of thinking, or with the potential and all of the money, all the projects that this money will be invested, the kind of profit that these projects will bear, any payment for any of these debts, including the interest, won't be as significant and won't be as harmful for the Egyptian economy?
I think this was not the first one for the 800 million euros from the European aid. We talk about also there is a loan from the international banking for 500 million.
Yes, 500 million.
With the boss two things related to the different the aid and loan itself belongs to three many things. Three of many things in the same spot is the big portion, which is the Upper Egypt. And you know well that the infrastructure in Upper Egypt was coming very, very poor. And I think the pooring even for this area is an issue. If you contributed the living of the people in terms of the drainage area, if you talk up also about the healthy care for this, also the pure water area to go for this one. I think the first option for the European aid in that part is how to expand and to deliver the pure water net to all this specifically big portion in the Upper Egypt. And the second portion related to some of villages contributed in Nile Delta and also the other side of the western area in Egypt. Related also, this is, I'm talking about, if you talk about what exactly Egypt needs for to secure all of 144 villages in a level under the pouring level, that at least you need 15 to 18 $billion to carry on for the infrastructure, the buildings, and also try to build the road for them and a way forward for some accommodation, some of factories to carry on with unemployment issues. But in the end of the story, that's one of the way of the first positive step ahead to dealing with the priorities, and also there is a wide map under the investment of the social ministry, and also it belongs to also the affair ministry in case of some cooperation with some aid institutes across the world allow to us to bring such values, allow to build more infrastructure as the priorities plan ahead.
Yes. Engineer Riad, now talking about using this money for a lot of the social safety, as a social safety net, it goes beyond just helping out with creating job opportunities and helping out the small and medium businesses and enterprises. Still, two of the biggest sectors that everyone keeps talking about that needs a lot of work is the health sector and the educational sector. We've heard a lot about projects in line for these two sectors. However, nothing's really being materialized as much as we are seeing for the energy sector, for the housing industry. Why is that, and do you feel that some of this money will be allocated at least to jumpstart these two important sectors?
Well, we should not ignore that we are 90 million people, and we need a lot of money. And we need to help ourselves. We need to generate the money ourselves. If somebody helps us, it is like headache tablets, or tablets to to enable us to stop the pain. But the main thing and the main issue is us. And I believe that we have to rethink about our plans ourselves, and everybody has to work. Everybody has to generate money. Everybody has to try to raise his standard of living. And then the infrastructure, which we talk about it and so on. Of course, this kind of money will help us in the infrastructure. Section like Upper Egypt, there is a lot of potential in this area. This is the people which they can work. We have to industrialize this area. We have to look at the agriculture section. There is a lot of things has to be done by ourselves. Let us this money help us to do the planning, to do the right planning, And I believe in ourselves very much that we can do it, providing that we get the education right. We get a lot of things has to be put right. Otherwise, if we open the subject of health and other things, there is unlimited problems because we are 90 million people. We are increased by so many people, 2.2 million people per year. Need schools, need hospitals, need everything. The infrastructure is not going to be, it's going to be demolished if we are not helping ourselves very quickly. And we build ourselves by working, by acting, by good planning, by good education. This is the kind of things which I want very much to stress on it. Nobody will help us.
Yes. Well, talking about recreating or creating job opportunities for a lot of people now, since 2011, a big part, many factories, many industries really were shut down. A lot of workers and labor were let go. Do you feel, being a member of the Egyptian Industries Federation, do you feel that bit by bit things are going back to normal, or are we still feeling the hard knock that the factories and the industries sector here in Egypt suffered since 2011? Are we getting are the workers who are working at these factories getting their jobs back? I mean, these jobs already existed. Are the factories fully functional? Are the workers getting their jobs back?
Let us put it this way. We have got a shortage of workers. Because everybody is visiting the university. Everybody is educated and he wants a desk. We have to learn the culture of working. We have to adopt other attitudes. We don't work. You are talking about unemployment. But who is unemployment? Graduate, university graduate, or workers, and so on. And we used to have a lot of profession which is from one generation to the others was giving to them. This has been demolished. Today, everybody, a lot of industries, they are lacking workers because people, they don't want to work. And we're not talking about the tuk-tuk, and we're not talking about this and so on, but there is a lot of people which they can earn their living without work somehow. This has to be stopped. And I believe, that, a city like Cairo, it is overpopulated, and still we are building in it. And then we have to go to the desert, and we have to go there. We can apply the law, we can have small communities. There's a lot of things should be done.
Yes, definitely. Well, Dr. Qaliouby, you mentioned a lot of the main 3 points that really need to be implemented for the economy to actually move forward and work with the foreign investors and encourage the reputation of Egypt being the #1 attractive investment destination in Africa. Now, dealing with the investment law, this has been an issue for quite a few years, discussed within the parliament, within analysts and thinkers, never really resolved. There was a promise of the one-window destination, getting all your paperwork done, getting all the procedures over and done with, and still not being implemented. Are we waiting for something that will take many, many years to actually happen? Are we hanging our hopes on few things that have been taking years to actually resolve?
Okay, if you try to put why we go for this tough decision related to the free floating and also for subsidiaries Riad, the matter is that we don't have no opportunities now to deal with some delaying or some of unknown targets. Our known target now is clear, that soon as you go for the further more stabilities and reduce the gap between the dollars and also the Egyptian pound, the main concern how to feed the internal market in Egypt with the currency flexible. And to proceed with the flexibility of the currency in the country, you need a direct investment. And this direct investment is main portion of that one is tourism. The second is the industrial investment. The third is the way forward for any local businessman would like just to deal with some projects. And the fourth is how to stop and close all conflicts from the investment with the old or the current businessmen, foreigner businessmen in country. I think in the last reporting had been delivered from the investment authority that now the conflicts and the punishment from the number had been delivered as a portfolio in the last stabilities. It showed is shrunk it down from 2,800 case to 1,200 case, which is mean that it's still now dealing well in the way to close all conflicts. And also, well, that said, the new law is very huge in terms of 5 chapters with 117 articles. Each article is dealing well, and the big portion with chapter 5 is already built to how to deal with the future punishment and conflicts.
Yes.
And I think this is what not recognized well even in the previous laws, and I think this is clear one. Maybe your question is, you are right, this cannot be stay too much because we start 1 year and now we already delivered that to the parliament to proceed and dealing with a lot of discussion for final approach and dealing with your mind also in the council authorities, investment authority, the High Council Investment Authority had been highlighted also with some of 17 decision or some of published. That's a big portion of that one is oriented how to display back the all stopping factories and some improvement in the Upper Egypt area in terms of new factories, some delaying in taxes, some encouragement for supporting the stopping factories. I think all this contribution, I think, is dealing with under the umbrella of politics leader. And I think the Presidential Institute dealing with that subject in high priority in a few next days.
Yes. Well, Engineer Riad, one final question because we're running out of time. Do you feel that with the lack of availability for foreign investors coming to Egypt, does this give the local investors and the local industries a chance to really claim their share of the cake, the pie, or do you feel that are they actually taking advantage of that, the absence of a foreign investor, or do you feel that they still face their own problems with the fluctuation of the value of the dollar, the limits on the imports as well?
I don't say that we don't, you know, we cannot ignore the foreign investment, but we have got look at the money which has been created for the Suez Canal. That means there is money inside the country.
Yes,
I want to use them. I want the existing companies to grow, not to close.
Yes.
We want everybody to work and to generate. The education has to be a priority to be seen about it, that this will help the future and now. You know, both of them has to be planned in a right way to enable us to needs this kind of things. We have to look at it, you know, future-wise and present-wise.
Yes, definitely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is definitely a lot of work to be done within the economic sector and the economic file here in Egypt, even though it is good news getting the second tranche from the IMF. And also the $800 million from the European countries as a safety, social safety net. That's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished guest engineer, Samir Riad, member of the Egyptian Industries Federation. I'd also like to thank Professor Dr. Gamal Qaliouby, the energy and petroleum specialist. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Good evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.